the forces set before themselves. Although technology can assist in the formation of the activities of egregores, the coarseness of technology compared to the human organism does not allow one who wishes to create themselves as a human according to God's predestination to become a biorobot. What is being discussed? It is about the fact that if a person, even if they are influenced by televisions and all these zombifiers, but if they strive to know the truth, if they do not want to be a robot, but possess this sense of peace and develop it, then all these influences will not affect them. And indeed, the most reliable and trustworthy path is the path of this person, directly communicating with God. In fact, indeed, this is the same as the problem of forming artificial intelligence, the attempt at zombification and so on. That is, it is an attempt to prosthetize one's own brains when there is a reluctance to engage in their development, that which is given to man by God. Therefore, whoever wants to will understand everything, while the concept of public safety is just a controversy for him in this matter. The interaction of a person with egregores and people mutually exchange energy and information with each other. Well, this egregore is depicted, meaning people contribute their power, energy, and information there, while some consume this information and so on. That is, there is an exchange of energy and information through the egregore. Well, these are interesting reflections. At the moment of death, indeed, everyone knows that the body emits fields that carry the soul away from the body at the moment of death. And here in the picture it is depicted. Here lived a little person. Here he is. And here he is, as they say, he gave his soul to God, or to whom he gave it is a big question. So, to whom did he give it? Let's take a look. Depending on the rules by which a person lived, that is, what vibrations he emitted, and what measure he possessed probabilistically, his soul will end up in the egregore that corresponds to his vibrational processes. That is, there are many egregores, but according to the thought patterns that a person has, his soul ends up in the egregore that corresponds to the thoughts he lived by. Therefore, ultimately, in religions and various occult sciences, one ends up in two maximally different egregores, in heaven and in hell. What is heaven? It is where righteous people possess each other, live, and so on. That is, this is the egregore. And hell is where the bad ones are. Therefore, they quarrel with each other, roast on bonfires, in cauldrons, and so on, meaning they do nasty things to each other. All of this is vividly described. There is certainly a lot of lies. But what is the essence? And generally speaking, what does the immortality of a person consist of? The soul of a person is immortal. And this is indeed true. That is, the matter has died, but the person lives in the biofield. It's similar to, there was even a play by Tchaikovsky in my youth, The Light of Extinguished Stars. We all know that in the universe, scientists and astronomers say a star has extinguished, but its light travels through the universe for millions and billions of years. It is no longer there, yet we still believe it lives. The same goes for a person. That is, the matter of his body, the physical, visible, solid, liquid, and gaseous, has died. But the biofield continues to live. Where? In resonant phenomena on other material carriers, in particular in the egregore, in the biofield. And his thoughts, everything he thought, is there. His frequencies. After all, what is a thought? If we draw analogies from physics, which everyone basically studied, it is a frequency, well, cipher, so to speak. That is, a person's thoughts are recorded in a certain code, a cipher. Thus, the letter A corresponds to one vibration, B corresponds to another vibration. If words and thoughts are all a mass of vibrations, these vibrations in the process of a person's life were emitted there, and they live there. Therefore, there is no trick here in the fact that if one possesses certain psychotechnics and tunes into a certain wave. Remember, we talked about the acquisition of the Holy Spirit. What did the Russian saints do? And Seraphim of Saraf restored the teaching on the acquisition of the Holy Spirit, that is, to step into dialogue with God. A person consists of what they eat and drink. So they would eat only bread and water, cleansing their cells, that is, their body and organism. And to tune into the right wave, they would create prayers, distancing themselves from noise to avoid interference. Person is the same receiver and transmitter. Well, from the perspective of a receiver, you know, at home you adjust the receiver. If a tram is passing by or there are other noises, there are all sorts of sounds, whistles, crackling, and so on. It's the same here. Noises are not needed, so where did they go? To the church. Rather, where did they go from the church? To nature, to the forest, where it is quiet. Aye, because there are many noises in the church, the sounds of trams, the priests sing. Beautiful women walk around. A person gets distracted. So to speak, there are no thoughts of God there. And all these praying people, they look at that priest. Will the priest look at me or not? And when the priest looked, he caught his gaze. There are no thoughts of God there either. So, how to hold the candle, when to bow the head, when to raise it, perhaps all these rituals. I dedicated 3 years of my life to studying everything that is in these rituals and so on. There is no scent of God there. Everything there goes strictly according to a predetermined program, like a performance. When to sing what. And a person does not think, but thinks about how to perform the ritual, you see. Not about connecting with God. Monks sing songs, beautiful words, beautiful sounds, all sorts of beautiful garments, diamonds, crystals, and so on. Therefore, all this distracts. We have already devoted enough time to this. What's next? Many people, based on the nature of the information they carry in the various fragments of their informational baggage, and relate to and correspond with different egregores. And here is a picture drawn. The same person, based on the nature of the information they possess, can belong to one egregore, to another, to a third, or even to several. Since information about their mood and psyche changes, a person can belong to different egregores even within a single day. Here he is calm, woke up in the morning, everything is fine for him. He is in an egregore, let's say, a normal one, as we would call it. Then he came to work. He got nervous here, got nervous there, cursed a bit, was provoked. He vibrated, and his mental state changed. Fell into a hostile egregore, and all of this escalates within him. Anger grows, and so on. Why? Because he has tuned his way of thinking to a certain egregore, and that egregore helps him with this, and the escalation continues. He cannot break free in any way. Therefore, he needs to relax, maybe smoke something, into the egregore of smokers, and it goes on. That is, throughout the day, one can transition. It doesn't mean that you are bound to just one egregore. So remember the classification. We talked about how egregores can be mutually embedded. That is, the egregore of smokers can be embedded in a hostile egregore, meaning it encompasses it, and so on. This also relates to bioplasmic correspondence, meaning the characteristics of tuning not only to information, but also to a person's energy, how he emits this information, whether it is powerful or not, whether he consumes or gives it away, and so on. Well, we have already said that as a result, at different moments in their lives, and even at different times of the day, people can be under the influence of various egregores and interact with them. And egregores can exert their influence, both energetic and informational, on the same person simultaneously, complementing each other, alternating with one another, or entering into conflicts with each other. The lifespan of the egregore. There is a picture depicting the lifespan. Here, as you can clearly see, at the top, a timeline spanning several thousand years. At the bottom, for comparison, the ratio of the standard frequencies of biological and social time is illustrated. You can ponder what happens to egregores after the ratio of standard frequencies changed in the middle of the last century, and the social frequency became greater than the biological standard frequency. I will answer, since Cole asked the question. Egregores are unstable, disintegrate. Their destruction occurs in particular of the same biblical egregore as information changes rapidly and all that is hidden becomes evident. And since everything there is based on lies, the lies are revealed. It is important to understand this. Let's return to the beginning of this illustration. You see many people generating a certain egregore and their personal composition and number. Over time, this egregore slides along this timeline. Some people die, others are born, connecting to this egregore and feeding it. So, here is the egregore, flowing, changing material carriers. Remember the supersystems, meaning with a renewable elemental base. Remember, we mentioned this, and constantly evolving. Here it meanders along this scale. Therefore, the lifespan of an egregore can be quite long historically and span many generations. Therefore, those who form the egregore, they shape it and know how to support it. These are the various occult schools, church orders, and so on. They know all these things. They may call it by their own terminology. Moreover, they can also hide it, and only the initiated know this. Among them, many, perhaps churchmen, do not know what this is. But in fact, this is how we have just examined it. The next concept of the egregore. The egregore is a single organism. Here is a picture, and it is drawn, well, I emphasize again, this is a diagram. It is not like that. That is to say, generally speaking, in the egregore, it can be said to be formless. The form is completely different. But since we are accustomed to certain stereotypes, since it is a single organism, let's consider the example of the human organism. Here is a person drawn, consisting of egregores. A person consists, as you know, of many cells, organs, and so on. So the egregore as a whole is a single organism, but formed not from matter, but from fields that exist among the people who are part of this egregore. And what are these fields? Some are determined by such a polarization frequency, while these are determined by such a polarization frequency. In relation to the egregore, the bioplasmic structure of each person and groups of people also occupies a hierarchical place, just as cells, specialized organs, and organ systems do within an individual human organism. That is, one can say, here are the lungs, and there are the kidneys, here is the heart, here are the eyes, and there is the brain. That is, egregores are also related to, I don't know, the biofields of individual people or groups of people. They are also like cells and specialized organs or systems of organs, circulation, and so on. All of this defines the character of the egregore organism. The only difference is that the assembly of the egregore organism into a single integrity in the hierarchy of the universe is carried out not at the level of biomass substance, but at the level of biofields. That is the whole difference. Just as in the human body there is a process of cell renewal, so people are born in long-lived egregores, grow under their care. And when they become adults, they support the egregore with their biofields until their physical death or until they leave this egregore. The next question, the next information about egregores. The egregore is a transpersonal factor of management. Let's consider what this means. The actions of people entering the egregore, look, people are drawn again. Here is their overall bioplasmic structure, the egregore, and they enter it through communication channels, meaning they interact with each other. So this is the egregore. The actions of people entering the egregore are coordinated by the egregore so that they complement each other according to the personal capabilities of each individual in a holistic, egregorially purposeful process. That is, the actions of each specific person are influenced by the egregore, which is a transpersonal factor, meaning it is more powerful than each individual. It organizes the activities of the people entering it in such a way that their actions, deeds, thoughts, and so on complement each other in a holistic algorithm by which this egregore lives. This is achieved through long-range channels of energy information exchange of a bioplasmic nature. Here are these channels, and we talked about this. And this occurs even when people know nothing about each other, while the egregore, the collective spirit, knows about each of them, in quotes. By the way, this is from Russian fairy tales, so there are no new discoveries here. Do you remember, there is the story about Koschei the Deathless, Ivan Tsarevich, and so on. Do you remember that term? Baba Yaga, here is the Russian spirit. Here it smells of Russia, Pushkin. That is, the collective spirit is the egregore. This is the specific collective Russian spirit. This is the egregore. Each egregore is a transpersonal factor capable of heterogeneous management and governs people to a greater or lesser extent. This does not mean that we are managed by the egregore like biobots like this. No, it again manages probabilistic predetermination, sometimes quite rigidly. And when a person lives in certain circumstances, and when these circumstances are so harsh, that person sometimes instantly realizes what comes from above, a hint. That is, essentially, he is overseen and managed through the egregore. Well, next we will discuss how to understand which egregore it is from. We talked about the acquisition of the Holy Spirit, but I forgot to complete the thought, or rather, to finish it. And with whom did you enter into dialogue? The acquisition of the Holy Spirit does not mean that you have entered into dialogue with God. That is, you went on a diet, so to speak, meaning you are fasting, praying, and so on. But if you are cunning with your thoughts or act incorrectly in life, then you will enter into a conversation, a dialogue not with God, but with one of the egregores. And I know indeed a lot of those psychics with whom I have had to meet. Nina Nikolaevna from Kronstadt, she has revelations. There are some who really sit down and their hand starts writing something on its own. They receive information. You read there, yes, something interesting, various events, and they can predict earthquakes and other cataclysms. Then the question arises, where did they get this information? For example, I know there was a signature Evelyn. Oh, who gave you Evelyn? Is it God or someone else? I don't know. They tell me, here it is, Evelyn. But who is Evelyn? What? It is clear that this is an egregore. But how to accurately determine who you are talking to, God or an egregore? And to what degree of obscurity is this egregore? This can only be determined by stability. If guided by indications you receive, hints from there, if your actions and life are going well, then you are receiving advice from the right place. But if you have one failure, two failures, three failures, then you need to reconsider. That is, you may not be dialoguing with whom you would like, but rather receiving exact opposite. The same often happens in our dreams, whether in our nighttime dreams or during daydreams. But it is absolutely important to understand that an egregore is a transpersonal factor capable of influencing people to some extent. That is, either rigidly or within certain limits. It provides opportunities and essentially manages processes. Therefore, what conclusion can be drawn from this? It must be remembered and guided by it. An egregore is one aspect of the objective social phenomenon called spiritual culture. Everyone talks about spiritual culture. But what is it? Is it standing with a candle in church, reading some books about the lives of saints, written by who knows who? Everything like that is spiritual culture. And we say that when we refer to the collective spirit, that is spiritual culture. That is, the existence of the bioplasmic fields of egregores is objective. But all materialistic science, the entire social system in which we live, does not recognize this, does not understand it, does not know it, and does not want to know. That is the horror. But is this actually the case? This should be taught in schools, in kindergartens, certain methodologies, in universities, how all this is done. To teach a person to master these skills, but there is no mention of this at all. Why not? Because materialists, Marxists, mysts, they say this at all. This does not exist. They say it cannot be so. But how can it not be when bioplasma scientists already say exists, and so it goes? If bioplasma exists, what is it? It is endowed. It carries information, endowed with a measure. The uniformity of bioplasmas, a resonance system. Resonance system is an egregore. Well, and we talk about all of this. That is, it exists in people's lives. But we are taught this silly nonsense. That is, we haven't gone through this. It hasn't been asked of us. Nowhere is this taught. So to repeat, an egregore is one aspect of the objective social phenomenon called the spiritual culture of society, the generation and transformation of egregores, collective spirits, and communities inherent to society. We will also examine what community means further. And if we are to speak broadly, we should speak broadly, then here below in the picture, what is depicted. In culture, from history, we know there was Jewish culture, at least according to the Bible. Then Jesus Christ appeared and said, Jews, we do not live this way. We must live differently. Then Muhammad came. So what happened next? There was a Jewish egregore. Jesus Christ came and began to preach his teaching, the true teaching of Jesus Christ, and he created, in a way that was deeply impactful, the Christian egregore. His Saviour Paul distorted it, and so on. But he also began to live, slightly destroying the Jewish egregore. Then Muhammad came, also a prophet, and he created the Muslim egregore. And you feel the difference in existence when these churches all meet there, or when you go to one, another, or a third church. What defines the difference of this spirit that reigns there, there, and there? It is defined by the measure. And now what? The concept of public safety. And we speak openly. If nothing of this is said here, then we say, we are forming an egregore towards the theocracy. That is, the egregore of those people who consciously work on mastering, each individually and humanity as a whole, the genetically determined potential for development, striving to align their vector of goals with the vector of God's goals. And again, it is fundamentally important that here, in this culture, these egregores were formed by default. That is, people did not understand what was happening and how it was hidden from them. Thus, these egregores are unconscious. Our egregore has a conscious nature. That is, people consciously understand the entire physics of the process, how it happens. That is, they act consciously. These people act unconsciously, bypassing their consciousness through the subconscious. And we act consciously, understanding how this is, what it is, and to what end. And we say, there is no need to fear any information. Information is objective. With prohibitions like how many are trying to ban the internet now, to restrict access, yes, it's all nonsense. It's just, well, not serious. They are simply afraid. They are in horror and fear right now. They are trying to ban us from saying something. But how can you prohibit it? Information, manuscripts do not burn. Remember Mikhail Afanasievich Bulgakov? That's it. If the information exists, then how can you prohibit it? You can't prohibit it at all. Therefore, there is no need to fear any information. What should be done? One must have a conscious attitude towards it, distinguishing truth from lies, the true from the false, and so on. That is, to have discernment. And what does discernment give? Acceptance into the circle of one's concepts of understanding the Trinity. Matter transforms as development and knowledge of management and self-management processes evolve, both in society and in all processes of the universe. That is, generally speaking, what the concept of public security is about is dead water. Management of the egregore through energetic and informational influence, such as, we have already learned that the power of the egregore is much greater than the energetic and informational power of an individual. In other words, the egregore is much more powerful than an individual person. If the parameters of an individual's energy tuning correspond to a certain egregore, meaning you align with the type of psyche and specific information characteristic of that egregore through your thoughts, imagination, or something else, in any conceivable way in your mind or through other means, then the egregore can elevate and carry such a person away. To burn it out, that is, to crush, grind, devour, and mill it, to crush it, so on. Well, this state, you know, when people, many have probably experienced it, when they get fixated on one thought, yes, on certain circumstances, and a person starts to ignite themselves from within, saying, this is so, and this is so, and then it will be there. And then they kind of tune themselves into this wave. And this corresponds to a certain egregore, and all of this spirals, and a person cannot break free from it. That is, the egregore carried him and can actually, so to speak, lead him to death, generally speaking. That is why we say that all diseases are, generally speaking, of an informational nature.